All right, and winter has arrived here in Shanghai. We are bundled up. We are enjoying the last bit of the sunny part of the winter here in Shanghai before it is daily gray for like 2 months straight. And while we can still be outside and have some sunshine in our eyes, what are we going to talk about today, Phoebe?
We're talking about something like actually, I feel like we should talk about the first episode, which for me, I personally think it is probably it's a prerequisite for like culture immersion or exploration, especially when you're in like a new environment. But I think we can also discuss about whether it is a prerequisite. So today we're going to talk about do we need to learn language, especially if you're in a new environment.
Yeah.
Well, my assumption from past experience will be probably it is a prerequisite, but recently through all the experience, I feel like, well, I mean, learning, I mean, as you said, language it is a vehicle, or it's like a getaway for you to help you to get to the culture immersion things, but it's not necessary. Especially we have all the, as you said, the AI tools to help us to especially translation. I mean, anyone, whether you're using iOS or Android system, you definitely have the translation app to help you to translate any kind of language.
Yeah, so I think this question of do you need to learn the language, we're talking about it more in light of recent technology. Yeah. I mean, I guess also there's people who are from English-speaking countries or speak English well enough, they'll always think, well, if there's enough people that speak English there, I can just get by. Like, why do I need to learn the language? And additionally, with the translation tools just becoming better and better, and perhaps in the not too far future, we have neural nets, and everyone has a Neuralink implant in their brain, and you communicate just brain to brain with no verbal communication whatsoever, and somehow we've assigned a mathematical code to each different thing in the universe, and we don't have to use words, and nuances don't get lost in translation, and it's all just narrowed down perfectly that there is going to be no reason to learn that language. And I think obviously each step of that is a different argument, but where we're sitting at now, I think we live in a world in which a supermajority of the world, especially when you're in major cities, can speak a decent amount of English, right? And regardless of where you go, if you do speak English, you're fortunately able to communicate with people at least enough to get what you need or what you want. And recently we've entered a world in which AI has gotten so good and these technologies have gotten so good that using your phone as a translator has become so advanced to the point where lots of gaps in communication are disappearing, right? And so that's where we are today, and I think that is the context in which we should talk about this idea of whether you should learn a language or not. And I am closing in on the end of something like Mandarin is a lifelong learning type deal, but I mean, I'm closing in on the end of the formal rigorous education to get to the point where I can, take my foot off the gas a little bit and just start to more naturally acquire the language when I don't know a word. You know what I mean? Like, I've gotten to the point where I know the top frequency words, and now that I am ending that, 4 or 5 year process, and these technologies are coming out to the point where people can communicate, at some points it's like, well, did I waste all of that time in learning the language? And upon further reflection, I think absolutely not. Because if you do not take the time to learn the language and understand the way in which they structure reality, because language allows you to understand how they structure reality in their head and how they communicate it to each other, you're losing so much, even if you do have this powerful translation tool in your pocket. So At this point, I still think it's a worthwhile exercise to learn the language and to put on all that time if you truly want to deeply understand. And I think looking into the future and this idea of like these neural links and just brain-to-brain communication, obviously we can't even have that conversation. Well, one, we don't know how far away it is, and two, we don't even know what that fundamentally looks like, right? But at this point, when there are still super powerful, quick, accurate translation tools, you know, if you're coming here just to do business for a week and get things done and talk to suppliers and make sure that everything's going to be delivered on time and you want to know the MOQ and all that jazz, like, one, there's enough people who are in that industry that speak English to get the job done with you. And even if you have to use a translator, whether it's in the office or whether you're getting food and have to use the translator to get your food, like, that's fine. Now, if you want to, you know, for the sake of whether it's personal growth or whether it's a academic endeavor to really truly understand another world, you can't do it without the language, period. I don't care what people say. Like, if people say you can have mastery of a culture, live there fully and deeply and immersively without learning the language, it's wrong.
100%. I mean, definitely, I think we're also talking about something like, because the argument on like whether language is necessary for helping some people to like, especially in this like AI driven world. I mean, if you just view like language as certain kind of like smaller just like communicating tool, yes, probably. You can also like use technology to help you a lot. You don't have to learn super deep. Like you don't have to like reach the language level, reach to like B1 or C1. But also I kind of agree with you, since because it's from my personal experience when I taken English as a minor major. Because before I was thinking it's just a way to improve the language and just help you just communicate better. But right now, while we're learning that, our teacher said you should understand. It's not like I think all of you guys, even if some of you grade A in my class, you master the amount of vocabulary. You are doing perfect in grammar. I would say you still can't communicate with people who use the language if you only see the language from that limited perspective, which is only a tool. It is a tool, but it definitely goes beyond that. So language I would say it's actually embodies the cultural values, expression, and also like the worldview from the people who use it. Even if people like the British people, they use English. The Americans use English. Also, some people from Europe, they use English. Well, technically, if you use English, you can communicate with them with this language. Certainly this language is a tool, but I don't feel this communication will, if you want this communication to go deeper, probably you have to learn more about the culture, especially knowing where they come from. So it's something go deeper than that. But also I feel like even if they all use English, as we talked about before, even with Jack and Paige with them, you also talking about even if you are using English, you still feel like there definitely some difference. The way how you express certain kind of words, how you use this language to express your emotion or some sort of their thoughts. Actually, those things are not only just difference in language, but also shows what kind of, I would say, the mindset behind all of that. That's the things I feel like it's the only thing. If you really learn language from that perspective,
right,
you will perceive that well. Other than that, if you only just, I would say, if you just say, I need to know, I just want to talk to people, then you probably just miss a lot of interesting things like that.
Well, I think there's also like, there were a couple things I was just thinking about. One is like, so we are in the park right now and this is a giant green and it's like, there's a lot of these like kids playing around. So I was like, okay, think about all these different kids who are ranging from what, like 5 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
All of them are studying English in some capacity.
Yeah.
And this is not like what I think is difficult for Americans who have not spent a lot of the time out of country is like they might see other countries learning English as like it's almost like bowing down to the US or to the Western world as like that's the language and like we're going to learn it because we want to have opportunities with them. No, like English has generally just become the international standard language, right? So that's not what it's about. And you know, we obviously don't learn Chinese from a very young age. Well, it's not as part of like, well, it's not worth doing, and it's just like, well, no, actually, that is what it is. It's like they right now, unless you have specific plans to go do business or study in China in the future, there's no reason for you to learn Chinese growing up. However, in this context, English provides that opportunity, not just in the US or Canada or England, but really anywhere in the world, right? It is the standard language between, you know, like if a Chinese person needs to go do business in Indonesia, the chances that they've learned Bahasa or that person has learned Chinese, though it is increasing, is low. They're probably using English as the business language. You know what I mean? So I think, one, Chinese people are in an advantage in that sense. And also, I think anyone from non-native English-speaking countries are also at an advantage because really it's becoming a universal trend that everyone is learning English growing up. And what that means is that for the first time ever, the history of this planet and the universe, this generation is becoming closer and closer to all having a common language where we can all communicate.
Yeah.
But also with this trend of English being spoken by people in countries in which it's not a non-native language, one trend that I've noticed is that the more fluently one speaks English, and I don't mean this like in a negative way or like a term we'll use in the US is like this idea of like whitewashed, right? Where you've like become Americanized or Westernized, but like they're much more in touch with Western culture. And by the nature of you learning English and you consuming materials in English, some of your thinking is going to start to become more in line with that world. In the same way in which there's probably some ways that I behave that I've become a little more Chinese because I've spent so much time in this language and functioning in this society in a deeper way in the sense of doing it in the language, right? In which I'm reaching a level of understanding in which would not be possible without the language.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's also, which also support the things we just discussed before. And language is more than just a tool. So the people like, we all like, because we all have like a language learning experience. Yours about Chinese, me is more about like typical Chinese kids do, like English as second language through all your studying life. Which I would say that yes, I mean, so language, the longer, it's also not about amount of time, but also about like the more input you're spending on language study, actually it requires deeper understanding of the culture behind this language. Because there's no way you're gonna understand certain kind of language, which, for example, like some words, like English, it's a borrowed word, so which requires you to learn more about history. Like, you know, before some English borrowed word come from France, or there is some. So when I was in primary school, when I learned some English words, I mean, if it's related to like a physical objects, it would be easier, like apple refer 苹果, or cups refer 杯子, or just object to object, place to place.
That's a lot easier because if there is a thing, it probably exists in both worlds, and like we see that thing is, we call it that, and like the essence of that word is the same. But when you go to abstract concepts,
that's the tough part.
Right. So I think like how about 开心
开心. Yeah. Oh.
In a
check out
textbook,
that.
it's happy. But the literal translation is like open heart.
Well,
And so
it's
I
not
think
true.
that's more. It's a lot different than happy.
Yeah.
However, what is taught in the textbook, the direct translation is happy.
Yeah.
And then once you, oh no, I'm gonna have to fix this when I toss it back to you. But when you live in this world and then you hear the term 开心, or another one's like 可以, or another one's like 感觉的感, I think those are ones that, like, unless you learn this language and have a certain level of mastery of it, you're not going to understand that aspect of the Chinese when you just use these direct translation of feeling or can, yes, or happy.
It's all about, like, if you're also, like, we've talked about the reading the ear, also about catching the cultural dynamics. So actually, if one can have, like, certain level of the language, it actually helps them to understand better about the deep meaning of certain kind of social etiquettes or about the unspoken rules, because they are all super abstract things. There's no way they're gonna relate them to, like, certain simple, like, concept as they already know. So I feel like sometimes it's a trick. It's the most tricky part in through all the language learning process. But also I feel like it's the most, I would say, treasure. That's when you actually learn that and try to figure it out. I think that's the time you'll feel, that's a great moment. I feel like that is probably the things if you only view, like, language as something a simple tool that AI can help us to solve it. Yes, if also you can also I feel like we also put this argument under certain kind of context. So it depends on different situation. For example, if say we're going to spend, only stop by for no longer than 1 week. Probably.
It's your ROI on learning the language for a week in country, other than you playing around on Duolingo 15 minutes a day for the month leading up to it. It's not worth you taking a serious attempt at learning the language.
But if you want to, like, study there, probably work there for, like, longer than 1 month or 3 months. I mean, probably 1 month you can still able to solve all the problems through with the help of the technology. It probably will be fine. But the longer you stay in certain kind of places, the deeper the connection you definitely need to make of that place. Unless you say, I can figure it out. I don't need to make any connection with the place. That suits yourself. Then I don't know what to do. But yeah, if you really want to. But I feel like you definitely need to build certain kind of connection with the place. In that case, I feel like even if you have a personal interpreter, it won't be the best option for people who really want to have a deeper connection of the place, or they really want to have, like, pretty immersive experience. So yeah, because the longer you stay there, I feel like maybe you will have same experience, because a lot of people who claim that they travel a lot of places, probably every time they stay the place no longer than 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
But for you, like, you definitely stay for certain kind of places longer than 1 month. I know there are some time you can. There is no way you're gonna speak the every local language.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've spent like 2 months in Vietnam. I don't speak Vietnamese. I've spent months in Thailand. I don't speak Thai. I've spent months in Malaysia. I speak barely any Bahasa. Obviously, Malaysia is a different story because Chinese and English are also widely spoken. But, well, actually, so when I started university, I tried to get out of a language learning requirement just because I thought it was useless. I thought the idea of learning a language was useless. It was like that much time for, like, why?
That makes sense.
And even that first year where I was in Sydney and Hong Kong and Amsterdam, you know, I was...
English spoken
I was like, I
country.
can speak English with all these people. Like, I'm good. Like, I can. And then I think the time in Nepal was probably the big, probably changed my perspective on that, is that, you know, if you really want to have a growth experience abroad, or you really want to learn a culture, like, the people you need to talk to are the people who don't speak English. You know what I mean? If you like, the most I've learned about Chinese culture, I think a lot of the clarification and the reflection have been conversations with you. But the people who have taught me the most about Chinese culture are these old people in the park right back here that don't speak any English. And if I didn't speak English, I wouldn't be able to communicate with them. And if I was using a translator, like, yeah, kind of, but no, like, you need to get it in the native form. Like, you need to ingest it in the Chinese language to really start to understand them. And so that's when I think I realized that, yes, like, I am so lucky that my generation across the world, like, most places, most people are going to speak an amount of English to where we can, for certain, communicate with each other. But where you can really gather the different perspectives of the world is the people who don't speak English, right? And so I wanted to be the one where I'm going to learn the language to then I can have this communication with them and see deeper into their world, and again, just understand how they see the world around them in a way that, again, for lack of a better term, like, tainted, right? And I don't want to say tainted in a negative sense, but again, if your ability to understand foreigners comes from your ability to speak English with them, and because you've spoken so much English and interacted with them, you've perhaps not purposely become a little more Western. In the way we just said, I perhaps have maybe become a little more Chinese through that process. And if you really want the experience of seeing, like, and this is the issue with a lot of people have about globalization, is the concern is, like, these just giant differences are going to disappear as we all start to communicate with each other more closely and we have this common language. But, you know, this is the last probably 30, 40 years where that there's still this generation alive that did not have that exposure growing up and does not speak any level of English, to where you can have a view into a world that's completely unlike yours. But, you know, after that, it's going to be to the point where we've interacted with each other so much. I mean, hopefully, as long as nothing catastrophic happens and we still have the openness we have in the world, which, you know, perhaps is not as certain as we wish it is. We're slowly going to become just closer and closer, which is a great thing. But also, that we're losing these just completely different perspectives of the world. And why this wraps all up into language is because, again, when someone starts to learn English, you know, by the virtue of them having to learn the language, they start to understand your perspective more, and so they're coming to meet you more halfway. Whereas if you really want to peer into the world of someone who is just nothing like you whatsoever, you have to do that work, and you have to learn the language, and then you go speak with the people who have not, you know, learned your language or learned English to communicate with you. And that's where you really just, like, have the, I was going to say mind-blowing, but, like, mind-expanding experience of seeing the world from a different perspective.
Well said. That's exactly how I feel. It's why also I appreciate the. And before I was really like, when I was young, I was like, why should everyone learn English? I'm like, I probably would never need to be there. But yeah, but luckily because of the environment I have, probably my generation, especially those Shanghainese people, we are, I would say also the other international city in the other part of the world, they might feel like, because we definitely see like this language can have, like, you know, some sort of benefits in if you really want to, like, do business with those people from English spoken country. That is a lot of help. But also, like, I mean, but now I feel like it will be too, like, it will be actually be a waste if you only view language as this way, as a more like business or more practical ways.
You also, like, unlock a different version of yourself. Like, you are notably different when you speak Chinese and English. You are like notably a different person, I think. Like your tone, for sure.
For my.
I think the way when we interact in Chinese, when we interact in English, you're like two different people. But that's how it's supposed to be. That's not. I mean, what I'm saying is you're doing it well. Like you're doing it how you're supposed to do it. And I remember when I was in Colombia, like my friends would always mock me because when I would start speaking Spanish, I would like try my hardest to be like, it's like the suave Colombian, like the I want to really embrace it in the way in which I'm not speaking robotically, which, not unfortunately, but just the reality of it is like a lot of Chinese, that's how they'll speak, is like they'll put it together like it's a math formula, right?
It's hard,
and it's like very robotic, right? And they don't really have the feel for it, which is better than Americans when it comes to Chinese. You know what I mean? Like kudos to that as far as the actually learning the language to communicate. But like it's just like putting a formula together. Whereas if you really want to get into it, like you have to almost take on the personality of that culture.
100%.
And again, so that's what I'm saying is I feel like it's sometimes with you it's like communicating with two different people altogether.
Yes, my friend said that because all our friends, we're also like, if we really want to, at first we just want to try to speak more naturally, because we notice our problem. A lot of people say, oh, if it's the Chinese style of speaking English, it's not only about accent, but we do speak still like in a way like how we speak in Chinese, which is emotionless.
Well, even now, so because we've talked about this a lot, and I think you talk about this a lot, is like Mandarin versus Shanghainese.
Yes.
Right, and the emotion involved. So I think that's why I was just thinking about, okay, what are the differences? What are the characteristics when you speak English versus Chinese? And I was like, when it's English, it's more like stern or straightforward, right? Like like we're being clear. Versus when you speak when you speak Mandarin, it's like polite and like 可以吗? Like it's just very like polite and courteous. And then when you speak Shanghainese, it's like much it's like more emotional, or like there's a humor involved, and because like that's why I am making the attempt to learn the language, is like I want to be able to peer into that world, because it is fundamentally different than listening to people speak Mandarin. And that's how it's supposed to be, is like Mandarin is the formal official standard language, and you use it in this official capacity, and it's like it's meant to be like this very courteous language, whereas the dialects is like where you really get to hear the emotion and like the unfiltered perspective of those people, right? And like you say this all the time, is when we're around Shanghainese and like I didn't catch the joke, and it's like you're almost like I can't even translate to you. Like if you don't get the language, it's like you won't understand it. You just won't understand. I can't translate you can't even translate from Shanghainese to Mandarin and expect me to get it. Let alone English, right? Like you just have to learn the language to be able to get it, because it's not the language, it's the people.
Yeah. That's why I feel like it's actually, I think one of the things very make Shanghainese who like really fell into the English better than other place of people, I would say, because of Shanghainese, the dialect itself. We have a lot of borrowed word from English. You know the history of Shanghai, and also there's a lot of city like us in the other part of the world have the same issue. So I feel like it's actually a great thing, because I feel like when I link Shanghainese and the English together, I feel like, oh, you are not learning language. You are actually viewing a living history. It's actually funny if you just trace back why they use this word or the other things. I realized, when we say Shanghainese cementing, means the
cement.
Cement. I was like, oh, great. Actually, they are linked. And also, why Shanghainese like love to. We love to use borrowed words, also use Japanese word or like Korean, because yes, some of the words we did like sound very similar. Probably like we have same origin in the old time. So I feel like if you view like language itself as a living history, it will bring a lot of fun. And in the end, you will find all the language. If you can learn more than 2 different languages, even like dialect, you can count it in as another language.
Because they are different languages.
There is somehow like link, because right now like I feel like the foundation of English for me, if I want to like, also like I mentioned I learned French little bit before. So when I want to learn Spanish, I feel like, oh, so it's like it helps to you should learn. You just to help you to learn better about the language, but also like it's also it's about because it's very hard for like people who only understand like a language from the Asian language system to then switch to the Western language system. But as long as you make the first step, actually, I would say the most difficult part will be the mindset. You have to understand the hidden culture mindset behind the language. And also, if you can do that, actually, you are doing your first, I would say, cross-cultural challenge.
It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, because
it's certainly a
you're not
challenge.
only just learning, you just not only want to master the tool, but you're trying to understand a brand new mindset, or to try to put yourself in other people's shoes, which are those people probably would never met.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's what it's about. It's like there's a force field right around these people in this culture, and unless you are willing to learn the language, you're not going to be able to access that world. And so yeah, I think of it more as a tool, and it's not about the ability to ask where the bathroom is or what's on the menu. Like that's not what it's about. I think that's where I like how you distinguished, objects, right? And it's more about these abstract concepts, because there are abstract concepts that exist in one language and don't exist in another, and that is a view into the world. And I think we don't want to expose you, but whenever you teach me Shanghainese curse words, I think, like, for example, one of the stronger curse words, and why, and it's one of the stronger curse words is like, it's referring to someone who's like a poser, like they lie about how much they have, like they might say they're super wealthy, but really they don't have much. And there's a word to call that person, and that's considered like one of the most derogatory terms in Shanghainese. And I think that's hilarious because it is such, it allows you to get a closer view at Shanghainese culture that, like, of course, because again, the stereotype, and partially true, is like Shanghainese are obsessed with wealth and money, and that's a super important part of the culture. And so that's why I think it's hilarious that one of the dirtiest things you can call someone is, saying they lie about the wealth that they have. So I think those are some of the things that are the got so many bugs around. Those are some of the bonuses of learning the language, besides just being able to function and ask where things are, is like you learn about the mindset in these people so much more.
So probably we can give some tips. So since we have technology to help us, so probably for the like those pretty simple words, like some words about daily objects or whatever, something which is not abstract, can relate it to physical things. Probably we don't have to memorize those words. We can ask AI for help.
Yeah,
but
that
also,
stuff's easy.
Yeah. But also, I feel like for some kind of words, which especially it contains subtle emotion, be like cursing words, like how do you use the word to like just
right,
to
but
make
exactly.
compliments.
But again, if you're gonna go deep enough to where you're gonna be able to understand these abstract, like the abstract terms cannot be described to you in English. That's the issue. So when you open a textbook and your Chinese 101 textbook teaches you this idea of face, like you reading the paragraph in English about mianzi, like you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
In the same way, like, again, I think the character Gan is like, there's these terms that if English is used completely to explain them to you, you're not going to understand it. You need to have the whole rest of the language, and you need someone to explain it to you in Chinese to understand it. And so that's kind of the trap, right? Is like, if you really want it, what we're saying is if you really want to go deep and understand this new world, you need to understand these abstract concepts. But in order to understand those, they need to be explained to you in Chinese. So you need to hit the books first before you can really get it.
And also, I was thinking also there are a lot of like super native expression or something I learned from you. It's not from textbook. Even if we are really exposed to a lot of resources, even online or something, but still a lot of things we can't actually know unless you meet the real person from that culture.
That's
So,
one of the best is like
yeah.
slang, like local slang.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
when I was in Medellin, like I would just want like there's just a wide assortment of curse words that they only use in that city, or there's terms they only use in that city. In the same way in Shanghainese, like I like the going really deep into like what that city's vocab is, and those are the really fun things. So.
Then I have a little question for you. So for people like, so we just skip the normal like languages tour part because we know we have the AI technology or whatever way people can figure it out. Like Duolingo, other apps, we have so many things to help us do that. But if we want to go deeper into the local culture, there's some way we can just, because we definitely can't master that language in just, it needs a lot of time. But we do want some like kind of like strategy to learn about some really like the special words or expressions. If you were putting that like a brand new place, for example, if I put you into you speak Spanish, you speak English, it's very hard. Probably to just put you in Japan.
Okay.
Also, you
But
you
I could still read in Japan. I could read most of the stuff in Japan.
Regardless.
How about Korea? I don't know
Okay,
anything about
Korea,
Korean.
Yeah. Okay. So you know you have AI and other dictionary, the digital dictionary can help you with the regular words and expressions. What were you looking for besides that to help you better immerse into local culture?
I mean, I would hit the books. Like I would study from the fundamentals. Like I would just learn the entire language.
But yeah. But how about for those people if they just have limited time? Say, well, I only have 1 week, but I really want to just, have a taste of local culture. But I know the fundamental thing that I can use AI just for like, like for help. But I also want to know something deeper about their culture. So if it was you, how would you ask to get these unique words?
Well, I mean, I guess you expressing interest in these concepts is going to be kind of an in, right? Like people, if you ask someone what that means, they're just going to be like impressed that you know the term and like are interested in learning it and asking for a deeper explanation. So I think what I would do is try to do some sort of research online or ask a Korean friend or use AI to what are some of these unique terms or unique concepts that are very special to Korean culture, right? Mm-hmm. And somewhere like Korea where, I mean, not exceptionally high, but higher than the rest of East Asia English levels, like I would hope that I would have a situation in which I could have the opportunity to interact with someone and I can be like, hey, like I heard about this thing, this term, whatever. And like, what does that mean? And that's a conversation opener. And again, if you're only spending the week there and you're not going to actually learn the language, you don't have the capability to ask, an older person in the park or whatever. But, take advantage of the fact that it is a globalized world and that we do have this common language. And though you're not having the deep experience that, ultimately you might wish to have, mm-hmm. This person, even though they speak English, is someone who may have never left Korea ever in their life. Right? And they're still, without you learning the Korean language, that this is a person who is as deep in Korean life and is unexposed to the rest of the world to where they're still going to have that thought pattern. So I would say don't get discouraged if you can't, master your Korean in a week, right? Like you can still have these interactions with people to learn the uniqueness of a culture, in the medium of English or whatever the common language is, likely English. But yeah, that's probably what I would do, is try to figure out what are some of these unique abstract terms that are super unique to X culture, Korean culture, and try to find someone who can explain that a little more deeply to me. Because what you're going to understand is like, there's all this prerequisite knowledge to understand this term, yeah. And so they're going to bring this thing up to you, be like, wait, what do you mean by that? And you're and that whole like
And the context are really
journey
important.
and journey of the conversation and learning the context is going to give you a better picture that you wouldn't have if you weren't lucky enough to have that interaction and conversation with someone. So I think that's what I would do. But
I agree.
again, as someone who entered university trying to get out of their language requirement to the point where a solid percentage of my waking hours at this point are learning various languages. It's important, right? And sometimes there can be a bit of obnoxiousness, particularly from Americans, that like they speak English everywhere. Why would I learn their? Why would I waste my time learning their language? Like, you don't have to, but you're not going to get that deep experience that you would if you could humble yourself a bit and spend some time studying.
That's actually something I feel like probably like the old generation of Shanghainese will have that. So they're like, it's weird they encourage their kids to speak English, but when it comes to themselves, they're like, no, we only go someplace where because we have you around, you can help us like translate. Okay, but what if we're not there? Well, just find some people who also speak Shanghainese. We know a lot of Shanghainese are overseas.
Yeah, but then they're not getting the view into the other culture.
Yeah, that's
what I mean. So there's almost this like cockiness about the Shanghainese that that doesn't really help them out, right? It's like they should just learn Shanghainese. Well, like, yes, you guys are awesome and have built an amazing city, but realistically, that's just not where the world is at the moment, right? So unfortunately, because of that, they're missing out on some experiences they otherwise would have. But a lot of Shanghainese, even the older generation, do speak English, right? So I would say, if you look across the world and you look at people in that generation globally, I mean, I think Shanghainese actually have a higher percentage of English speakers than the rest of the world.
100%.
So, yeah.
Well, but also I feel like, because we're about to wrap it up, so I feel like we definitely talk really deep about how language will play an important role in this cross-culture experience context. I feel like, we'll definitely, if time permits, we can definitely go deeper than that.
And I think, again, summing up, it's all dependent on your goals. Like, there is no answer, right? And if I were starting from scratch in the end of 2024 with all of this technology and supposedly Elon's getting Neuralink around the corner and we might all have chips in our brain in the next 10 years, like, I don't know if I would put all the hours into Chinese again. I'm very thankful for what I've learned because of doing it. One, in the process of doing it, like developing that sense of grit of just like, this is a long process, I have to do it, and the patience. And also what I've learned from the ability to interact deeply in this world. But I mean, if someone pushes back on this idea of putting all these hours in and because they're referencing the technology that's coming, like I totally also understand that perspective. You're not going to get the experience that I was lucky enough to have and that anyone who's really sat down and learned a language deeply and then lived in the culture has had, which is really profound. And again, I'm so appreciative to have had it. But again, there's a million ways to spend your time. And so if you don't think that's one of the valuable ones, I would at least encourage, if you are going to live abroad, to learn a little bit of the language. But I can totally empathize with someone who doesn't want to put in the thousands of hours that are required.
100%. Yeah, I won't recommend people like us, because we have to, because we're not the major subject. We have to learn if you want to pass all exams and go to the college and thus get higher education degree. But still, I feel like it depends on your goal.
If it wasn't for the uncertainty of what technology looks like, if it wasn't for Moore's law and the fact that like we can't even comprehend how fast things are going to develop, I would say 100%, like, do it. Like, but we don't know what the future looks like, and this is something that takes a long time to master. And there might be better uses of your time. So depends on your goals. Reflect on it yourself. Maybe talk to AI. to decide if it's a good choice for you or not, as ironic as that might be.
But
But
also, I feel like it's also the same thing. Like, even we all have the calculator. So before calculator, we have to learn the mathematics to know how to just do the math. But right now, I feel like the people still learning that because of the process of learning this kind of things, help you gain the ability to being logic, right? Being logical and also being rational about all the. Yeah, just help you to build up the ability to understand the all the numbers and all the things. So
Well,
I feel
again-
like same thing works in language study.
yeah, and regardless of the, the ROI on your time, like doing difficult things for difficulty's sake and like learning from it and sticking to something is also an experience that one should have at some point in their life. And I feel like learning a language that's, for you learning English or me learning Chinese, someone whose native language is Spanish learning Arabic, like these languages that are just completely different, and just putting in the hours and the frustration and feeling like an idiot, and then if you get the opportunity to go live there and to still feel like an idiot because you've spent thousands of hours and you still can't communicate with anyone.
Yep.
Like when you learn Chinese in the US and then you come here, no matter how long you studied, like you don't understand anyone because you just haven't had the reps of like the real life native level speed, or you guys don't, like, you read a textbook with the grammar perfect, like no one actually talks like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but probably I will feel the same when I go to Rochester. I feel like I probably like
I think that might be tough. So again, like I think having that experience for the sake of it is also a good thing to go through, doing difficult things for difficulty's sake, and just training your brain and pushing your limits is a good thing. But yeah, I think you just have to look at your unique situation and again look at the ROI on it. And yeah, I mean, I kind of did that math like 4 or 5 years ago, is that do I need to do this? No, but if I do it now, I'm going to have this the rest of my life. If I were 50 or 60 and wanting to start studying, that would be a different discussion, right? Because if I was doing it for the sake of, committing to something and learning it for the sake of learning it, like, that's great. If you have intrinsic interest, that's great. But thinking, well, if I spend 5 years to learn this, and then, if I'm lucky, I've got 20 more years of full life in me and full energy to really use it, then, like, I don't know if that's how I'd use my time. In the investment perspective, right? Not the intrinsic enjoyment perspective.
It definitely worth it. It's how I feel like our past language learning experience bring us here. It's one of the important things.
And don't you all just want to be exactly like us? No, again, that's what I'm thinking is like, yes, we're lucky, but we also had the intrinsic interest in it, right? Like, you didn't learn English because you liked English. I didn't learn Chinese because I like Chinese. We learned it because we want to be able to access the other world. That's what it is, yeah. Right? And so, again, I think this is something where there is no clear answer. Everyone's got to look at their own situation, the time they've got in their hands, the willpower they have to keep going when it feels like you're making no progress. And again, yeah, in light of this new technology, is it actually something that's worth doing? And those are all decisions that you will have to make. But if you're trying to make that decision, a good place to get some input would be
Total Warsaw.
The Chameleon Club. Link in description.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I will say yes. And also if you want to really like figure out some place to try to like so it also like help you to like think about the ROI of doing that. Also share the probably same experience. You can try hopping Chameleon Club.
And we'll see you in there.
Yeah, meet you there.
But until we see you in there, we're gonna start to clean up this stuff. We will also see you in the next episode. Yep. Another day in the park. And yeah, it's getting dark.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little tired. And we're going to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking with me. I appreciate you taking the time to sit out here and talk to the people.
I mean, I feel very honored as well. I mean, it's a good way to use like your your second language to try to
That's the only reason you're really doing it. You're just doing this for speaking practice.
no, not speaking practice. It's try to discussing different things and in the other like totally different language. It actually helps you discover new perspectives,
Yeah.
even if it was the same topic.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.